Hi and hello. Welcome to the second episode of the newest podcast in town, The Word Speaks.
The word speaks.
All right, kumusta? ¿Cómo estás? Hope you had a great week, and I hope that you're having a great weekend so far. And I also hope that you enjoyed the pilot episode as much as we did. We're very, very much grateful for all your positive feedbacks. We've been reading comments and personal messages on our personal accounts. And a huge shout out to all the supporters of this new endeavor of the Word Print Ministry. Most especially to these two beautiful individuals named Jeff and Princess. So on our Facebook page, Mr. Jeff Zata mentioned or said, "Thank you, the Word Ministry." What is this? DWM. The Word Print Mag. No, it's DWM. It's the Word Magazine. Thank you, the Word Magazine staff, for this podcast. God bless you, the ministry of the Word staff and our humble yet powerful columnists. Thank you, Mr. Jeff. And Princess Fel de Jesus said, "Super love this. Praise the Lord." Wow. Thank you guys for these affirmations. Through God's help and through God's grace, we'll keep on exerting best efforts for this endeavor to grow, touch people's lives, and be a means to spread the good news because that's the primary goal. Just like our motto, evangelizing the lost, edifying the saints. So, yeah. But before we proceed right into reading, I'd like to express my huge appreciation to Pastor Esquel de la Cruz, a former OIC and leader of the Word Print Ministry, for correcting me. It was not 1990, but the Word magazine started in 1989. No, this is a sign I should work better on my history assignments. Thank you, Pastor Esquel. So, yeah, let's go right into reading. For today's reading, we have Mr. Benjamin A. Sico's write up entitled Christianity in the Midst of Pandemic, and it is from the published issue number 220 under the column Lanterns of Heaven. All right, so here we go. In a few short weeks, we have witnessed a crisis unlike anything most of us have ever seen. A crisis where any pre existing course of action has to be put on hold or reset. Streets were nearly empty, business establishments were closed, classes were suspended, online classes have been implemented, people stayed at home and worked from home. Social distancing has been the byword and battle cry of the people. These unusual scenarios that we were not accustomed with are now considered as norms in our present situation. A huge, unexpected shift in our way of life is caused by the new coronavirus pandemic that currently distresses the world. According to the World Health Organization, or WHO, coronavirus is a family of viruses that include common colds, seasonal flu, MERS, and SARS. WHO has given this particular coronavirus the acronym COVID 19 for Coronavirus Disease 2019. This novel and deadly virus, which originated from Wuhan, China, is proved to be highly infectious and is related to the rampant wildlife trade therein. At the time of this writing, COVID 19 has already spread across the globe, killing more than 50,000 people. These are terrifying, trying, and difficult times, and it is believed that the situation is likely to get worse before it gets better. But as we shake our heads in disbelief of what is happening in our world today, we need to do something and take upon the role of being part of God's true church. How then we, as Christians, are called to respond to this? Number one, relentless faith. In situations like these, it is easy to lose faith and live in fear. As you look around, we see how this crisis has brought out the worst in some people. The panic caused by the rising case counts has triggered most people to rush on grocery stores to purchase and even hoard several bottles of alcohol, face masks, and respirators, despite pleas from medical experts not to. This panic also unearths racism, xenophobia, and discrimination. As Christians, we do not respond like how the world does to this COVID 19 crisis. The Bible reminds us that we should not conform to the pattern of this world, but we must be transformed by renewing our minds. Romans 12:2. We are not of this world, and we do not think like the world. We, as followers of Christ, are not like everyone else. So, while the world is being consumed by fear, we have the biblical obligation to use our faith more than our human limited reason. Instead of asking the question, what if? We ought to ask, who is? What if I or my loved ones get infected? What if this happens? And what if that happens? These questions breed anxiety, worry, and fear. This is exactly how the mind of the world works. On the contrary, the question that brings faith, strength, and hope is the question, who is? Who is my God? Who is our God? These questions remind us that the God that we are serving is not only omnipotent and omniscient, but also omnibenevolent. He is the Jehovah Rapha, or the God who heals, and the Jehovah Shalom, or the God of peace. He is the God who is in control of everything. Faith allows us to see God in everything, in the few numbers of recoveries, community volunteerism, bayanihan, and even the people who dare correct the government. We see Him in kindness, in conversations, in resources, and even in reminders. And the reason why we see Him and His goodness is because of our relentless faith. Number two, selfless service. While much of the secular world's response to the pandemic has been inward looking and driven by fear, this COVID 19 situation presents a God given chance to shine in the darkness of the moment. Historically, Christians were no strangers to pandemics. In 1527, less than 200 years after the Black Death killed about half the population of Europe, the plague re-emerged in Martin Luther's town of Wittenberg and neighboring cities. In his famous letter, Whether One May Flee from a Deadly Plague, the famous reformer weighed the responsibilities of ordinary citizens during contagion. His advice served as a practical guide for Christians confronting infectious disease outbreaks today. Luther argued that anyone who stands in a relationship of service to another has a vocational commitment not to flee. Those in ministry, he wrote, quote, must remain steadfast before the peril of death because the sick and dying need a good shepherd who will strengthen and comfort them, unquote. As followers of Christ, we are to exhibit selfless love to others, just as He did for us. He said that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. John 15:13. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful yet most difficult Christ's teachings to us. This principle of thinking others before ourselves could be the most powerful driving force in living out of love. In these trying times, we can offer our service for others by turning every opportunity into quote unquote gospel moments. As we anticipate for the world's healing, it is our duty to intercede in unceasing prayer for the lost and afflicted with physical and spiritual illnesses. We can seize this opportunity to check on our neighbors and be in contact with them to let them know that we care and are available to help them. We can make use of this time to be an influence even to those we connect with online. Instead of spreading fake news and fear mongering, we can share peace and love. In this time of despair and uncertainty, all the more our responsibility as Christians must be boldly carried out. Speak faith, hope, and salvation. And as we look back on this crisis, people will see this episode of our history as one of that reflects credit on the God that we are serving, as the people see His work in us as we serve them. Number 3, radical obedience. By radical obedience, we mean immediate obedience that fulfills the commandment to its fullest measure. As Christians, we are called to fully obey God's words and the people He handpicked to rule over our nation. The Apostle Paul wrote this command in Romans 13:1 to Christians living in the city of Rome. If these Christians were commanded to obey their governing authorities, then the same command surely applies to Christians today. For this reason, we ought to lead the way in obeying many of the orders and directions our governing authorities have issued in dealing with this crisis. We can wash our hands, sanitize, practice social distancing, and the like, especially when such simple practices can slow the spread of the pandemic. It must be noted that our motive as Christians for compliance does not arise merely for purposes of self-preservation, but in an ethic of service to others. Because if we wish to care for the afflicted as mentioned above, we must first and foremost not infect the healthy. All authority belongs to God alone, and any authority belonging to any human being is ultimately a derived authority. They only have authority because God has entrusted some measure of authority to them. Therefore, if we are going to live in submission to the authority of God, then we must also live in submission to those rulers who have been entrusted by God with authority. Now more than ever, we need to be united in complete trust and obedience to God. As the Bible declares, if we will only humble ourselves, pray, and turn from our wicked ways, surely God will heal our land. 2 Chronicles 7:14. This may not be the last outbreak that we are going to see. There's going to be more outbreaks and pandemics. So, while the world is presently healing from this pandemic and is preparing for another possible pestilence that may come in the near future, we should act now and consider our role during this time of crisis, because when, if not now, are we called to rise and shine? All right, bravo, Mr. Benjamin. He's actually a kuya to me, a brother to me. Congratulations. And thank you very much for sharing these wonderful insights. To those of you who are still listening on this part of the episode, I have a small favor to ask. Please do follow all of our social media accounts. We have The Word on YouTube and we have The Word Magazine on Facebook. So, I've been your companion, your friend. I'm Jimmy, and this is The Word Speaks.
The Word